Everyone have the note packet then? Okay. All right. So we have 3 pages to do of this, and just so you guys know, I don't think we're gonna do a quiz next week, Monday or Tuesday. I think what we're gonna do is learn 4-3 day 2 and maybe 4-3 day 3. And then after we come back, we'll finish a lesson or 2 and then take a quiz. Are you guys okay with that? Yeah, okay. So I think that's what we are going to do. All right, so the type of question that we're going to go over today is they're gonna give you 2 triangles and tell you a congruent statement like this right here, okay? And then what they're gonna do is ask you for X and ask you for Y. So here are my 2 triangles, and I can decide to solve for X or Y first, depending on what I'm given. And if you notice, this has an X and a Y in it, and this has just a Y, so I wanna start with the Y, okay? Now, if you notice, this has a degree measure by it, so it's angle D. And how we use this right here is this congruent statement right here tells us what angles are equal to each other. If D comes first in this congruence part, that means it's congruent to A, which comes first there. So angle D, which is 2y minus 5, is going to equal angle A, which is 65. And that's how we would find our Y. So we would add 5, and I get 2y equals 70, and then divide by 2, and y is 35, okay? So that's one of our answers, and we can come and put that right here. Now, the other thing that we have to find is X. And if you notice right here, this right here is side EF, okay? Side EF. When I look here, EF is the last 2 letters of this, so that means it's going to equal BC because it's equal to the last 2 letters of that. So 2x plus y, which is our EF, is going to equal BC, which is 90.6. So EF and BC are equal because of this congruent statement. So I'm gonna say this is 90.6, and then I'm gonna take my y, which is 35, and I'm gonna substitute it in there, okay? So I'm gonna go 2x plus y is 35 equals 90.6. And then I go ahead and solve that. I'm gonna subtract 35, and I get 2x equals, would that be 55.6, I believe? And then we would divide that by 2, and x would equal, I believe that would be 27.8. Did anyone have a calculator and check that? I believe that would be what it would be. So that would be this answer right here. Okay, let me just open up my calculator really quick. What was that? It is right? Okay, thank you. All right, so now let's go down to this one right here. And with this one, they give us a congruent statement. And so I'm gonna draw out 2 triangles, okay? And when I label A, B, C, I'm gonna do A, B, C. And then when I do D, E, F, I'm gonna do that same order. So I'm gonna go D, E, F, okay? Now, what I'm gonna do is label what they're giving me here. So one thing they're telling us is side AB out here is 7. Side BC is 9. And side AC is 11 plus X. Then side DF is 3X minus 13. And DE, right over here, is 2Y minus 5. Okay? Now, what we can do with this is we can now go and look at it and try to find our X and our Y. So if you notice, this right here is side AC, which is the first and last letter in that congruence part. And then this right here is DF, which is the first and last letter there. So those would be equal. So I can set those two equal to each other and solve. So what I'm gonna do is do 11 plus X equals 3X minus 13, okay? Now, when we go to solve this, I'm gonna bring my X over to the right, and I get 11 equals 2X minus 13. Then I'm gonna add 13, and I get that 2X equals 24. And then divide by 2, and X is 12. So that's one of our answers, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is try to find my Y. And if I look back up here, my Y is this right here, okay? That is DE. And DE is the first two letters of this, so that would equal AB, which is the first two letters of ABC. So those two are going to be equal. So what I can say there is 2y minus 5 equals 7, and then I can go ahead and solve that. Add 5, and I would get 2y is 12, divide by 2, and y is 6. Okay. All right, so now let's go to this page right here. And one thing I want you to realize when you look at this is that how this one is positioned and how this one is positioned is not the same. Like this one was kind of turned upside down. So you can't just say like A and R are the same. When you try to decide which ones are the same, you look up here, okay, the order of those letters. So if I'm looking for angle A so that I could solve for this, A is first, so do you guys get that would equal P? So 2x plus 4 is going to equal 100. So we'd just be doing algebra. 2x plus 4 equals 100. Subtract 4. And 2x equals 96. Divide by 2. And x would be 48. Okay, that goes right here. And then what we can do is find our y, and y is right here. That's DC, okay? What side on the other polygon would that be equal to? RS, right? Because this is the last two, then this is the last two, and RS is up here. So now I'm going to say 3y minus 3 equals 12, and just solve that. So I'd add 3, and I get 3y equals 15, divide by 3, and y is 5. And that goes right here. Okay. Then if we go down to this one, notice that we know that RS has a y in it. So RS is the first two letters. That's going to equal TV, which is 24. Okay, so one of my things, I just have to say 2y minus 1 equals 24. Okay, and then solve that. So I'm going to add 1, and I'd get 2y equals 25, divide by 2, and y is 12.5. Okay, so 12.5 is our y. All right, then I still have to solve for my x. So when I go to do my x, notice that the x is a degree and it's angle t right here, okay? So x is angle t. Angle t is my first angle here, so that's gonna equal angle r, okay? Now, here's what, when you guys look at angle R, we don't know what it is, but could I find it? If that's 90 and this is 78, how could I find that? What did we talk about yesterday? This is 90, what should these two add up to? 90. What's 90 minus 78? 12. So this angle right here is 12, and angle R equals angle T, so that just means angle T is also 12. So X is just 12. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, then if we go to our last page here, we're gonna have a situation today where I don't remember with you guys, I always forget what I've done with high school, what I've done with you guys, but we're gonna have two equations and they're each gonna have an X and a Y in it. Have we done that yet this year? No? Okay. So in this, we're gonna find X and Y, and I would think you guys did this in algebra last year, but we'll see. So when you look at this, okay, first of all, I should say this. These two are congruent. These two are congruent. And do you guys remember if we talked about yesterday, we talked about the third angles theorem, that if two angles of one are congruent to two angles of another, you can assume the third angles are also equal. So one of our equations is going to be 5x minus y equals 18. And we can't solve that because we have an x and a y in it. When you have an x and a y in your equation, you need a second equation to be able to solve the first one, okay? Now, let's try to figure out what I can set this 3x plus y, which is this angle, equal to. This 3x plus y, that angle has two arcs. So it's going to be equal to this angle right here that has two arcs. However, I don't know what that angle is yet, but can I find it? Yeah. Wouldn't I add these two together and subtract from what? 180. So if you went 148 plus 18, that's 166. What's 180 minus 166, 14. Okay, so this angle is 14. So my second equation is going to be 3x plus y equals 14. Okay, now, when you guys did this in your algebra class last year, you probably were taught 3 different ways to do it. One way you can do it is graph them, but it doesn't work for everything, and if you have an answer that's like a fraction or something, you can't tell that from the graph. You also can use substitution, and then the last way, your teacher either called it elimination or linear combinations, okay? So what happens is when you look and your x's line up, your y's line up, and your numbers line up, I would suggest you guys use elimination. And what you try to do, why it's called elimination, is you try to eliminate your x's or your y's. And how you do that is adding going down. This is an easier problem to do because do you guys get that already my y's are going to cancel, right? So these are gone when I add down, and then I just add going down for my x's. 5x plus 3x is 8x. 18 plus 14 is 32. And now I can solve for x, and I would get that x is 4. So that is one of my answers, okay? Now I have to solve for y. When I go to solve for y, I pick one of these 2 equations, and it doesn't matter which one. I would probably choose the one in pink because it has a positive y instead of the minus y, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write down that pink one, 3x plus y equals 14, and I'm gonna take this 4 and put it in for x, and then I can solve for y. So I would have 3 times 4 plus y equals 14, okay? Now this is 12 plus y equals 14, and then when you subtract 12, we know that y is 2. Do you guys remember doing that? Did you get that far in algebra? And did you guys all have the same algebra class last year, mainly? Okay. You all had Miss Herrick, right? Okay. All right. Now let's look at this problem. And again, we have an x here, and that is for PS. PS is this and this, and that's going to equal RS right there. So PS, this is going to equal RS, which is this. Okay, so one of my equations is x equals 2y. And I know that just because this is PS, which is the first and last, so that's going to equal RS, which is the first and last. Now, we also have a situation where we have this, which is PQ. PQ is the first 2 letters. That's going to equal RQ, which is right here. Okay? So I'm going to say 2x equals 3y plus 8. Okay? Now, this is what we're going to do here. If you like elimination, with elimination, you could do this one with elimination, but you'd want to get your x's lined up, your y's lined up, and then your numbers lined up. And you certainly could do that. You could bring your y's over to the other side, and then this one would equal 0, and then you'd have your 8 there. And you would line up your x's, line up your y's, line up your equals, and line up your answer, okay? That's one way to do it. The second way to do it is called substitution. And when I would do substitution is anytime I have an equation solved for one of the variables, or I could easily solve it for one of the variables, okay? This is already solved for x. When that happens, what you can do is you can take what x equals and you can substitute it in to the other equation for x, and then you would only have y's in this equation. So what I would have there then is 2 in for x, I'm going to put 2y, so 2 times 2y equals, and then it's just 3y plus 8. And why that's nice now is I have the same variable in that equation. So 2 times 2y is 4y equals 3y plus 8. Then I'm going to subtract 3y. Okay. And I would get y equals, these cancel, and y is 8. That is one of your answers. Now, to go back and find x is even easier in this one because this is an easy equation here to solve for something in. So I'm going to pick that x equals 2y, and I'm going to take that 8 and put it in for y. So x would equal 2 times 8, which is 16. Okay, so that is, and by the way, you, like say you were on a test and you wanted to check your answers, you could put these back into each of these equations and make sure they work. Okay, and the other thing I can tell you guys too, if you got like a really ugly decimal like 3.27 and it just kept going, it's not right. So if you get a decimal that's like 0.5 or 0.25 or 0.75, maybe even 0.33 would be okay. But if you got anything else, then I'm guessing you did it wrong. Okay? Now, we're gonna do one more, and I'm just showing you this because sometimes what happens is your x's and your y's don't automatically cross out, okay? So when that happens, what you do is you look at your numbers in front of your x and you see what could I multiply one or both of the equations by so that one of them is like +3 and the other one is -3, okay? What do 2 and 5 go into? 10. So you could multiply the top one. Don't do that. We're going to actually do the y's instead. But you could do the top one by -5 and the bottom one by a +2, and your x's would cancel. Okay? The other thing you can do is multiply your y's by a number. And in this one, that's what I would choose, only because my 3 is positive and my 2 is negative. So one of them's automatically going to be plus and one's going to be minus. What do 3 and 2 go into? 6. So I want one of them to be a +6 and one to be a -6. So do you guys agree for this one I'd multiply it by 2? And this one I'd multiply it by a +3. Now when you multiply it, you multiply that 2 by the x, by the y, and by the constant. So I'd get 4x plus 6y equals 2. Okay? Then when I go to do the other one, same thing. 3 times 5x is 15x. 3 times a -2y is -6y. And 3 times 15 is 45. Okay? I made up this problem, and I should change it because this doesn't come out to even like whole numbers. So if I cross this out and add going down, this is 19x. And when I add this going down, I get 47, okay? When I divide this by 19, I get a yucky decimal. Does anyone want to do that to like 2.47? Okay, so this wouldn't be a common problem you guys would get in your homework or on a quiz. Then, when you go to do your other one, you choose one of these two to put it back into to find your y. So here's what we would do. Okay, so I could say 2x, I could use either one, plus 3y equals 1, and normally this would be a nicer number to work with, but it's 2.47. So what we would do is go 2 times 2.47 plus 3y equals 1. 2 times 2.47 would be 4.94 plus 3y equals 1. Then I would subtract 4.94 and 3y would equal negative 3.94. Divide by 3, and y is, you're going to get negative 1 point, is it like 31? 1.31 or so? Yeah. Okay, but like I said, you normally wouldn't get decimals like that, okay? All right, so your assignment for today is so if they say anything about rigid motions, just ignore that. That was in the last chapter, okay? So you guys have to hear my morning while you're copying this. So I